Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Commune podcast. Tonight, we're going to be discussing first-person shooter Dusk. This is our second episode on Dusk, and we'll be talking about the map design and the subject of arenas. I'm your host, yourself, and with me I have Golem,
Hello.
Shouty,
Howdy.
and Adrian.
Hey.
So, we talked in our first episode about Dusk, just about our broad impressions of the game, and we touched on a lot of different subjects, the weapons, the enemies, the art design of the game. And so this time we're going to get a little bit more into the details of the levels themselves. So if you haven't played Dusk, this probably is it's either going to be an interesting introduction to the levels, or it might just go over your head entirely. But we want to talk about it in the context of the history of first-person shooters. So Dusk being a game that was inspired by Quake and early third-person shooter, or early 3D first-person shooters. We want to talk about one of the defining level concepts of the first-person shooter, which is the arena. I think the idea of an arena is not something that's clearly defined, and some things that feel like an arena to one person may not to another. And so we'll be looking at some characteristics that may define an arena, but really the subject of the discussion is not to come to a really strict definition of this one particular term, but to investigate some of the types of spaces that level design or map design in a first-person shooter can use. So not everything is just, you can describe a game as one fight after another, but beyond that, you need some a little more sophisticated terminology or knowledge to characterize and understand the maps. So, Shouty, can you give me the dictionary definition of arena?
The Oxford Languages Dictionary definition of an arena is a level area surrounded by seats for spectators in which sports, entertainments, and other public events are held. A place or scene of activity, debate, or conflict.
Okay. So do you think that applies well to a first-person shooter? Can we use that for Dusk?
Maybe only a little bit, not entirely, only in a loose sense.
It's almost useless.
Yeah.
I think the salient part of it is the flats arena, or what was it?
The level area.
The level area that's surrounded by...
Well, it says surrounded by seats for spectators in which sports, etc. are held.
Surrounded by seats for spectators. Right. So, there's not too many spectators built into first-person shooter levels, but the level area, certainly a level area that's surrounded, is something that you could use and look for in first-person shooters, right?
Yeah, that's true.
I guess implicit in that definition is the idea of an enclosed space, that is, it's the seats surround something from which something to occur, it's action occurring within, a defined area.
Right. I think that is maybe the most useful part of the dictionary definition, that there's a border to it, essentially. Golem, could you give your intuitive definition of an arena?
Any space where more than one enemy can hit you.
All right, and naturally, Well, I guess I should ask you, do you find that definition useful?
No, and I mean, I guess that's because intuitively, I think arena is something that a designer might intend, but is really subject to emergence, where depending on the enemy behavior, you could make anything into an arena, especially in a game like Dusk, where enemies just kind of go wherever they please.
So, I think enemies going wherever they please is a point that I want to, or that I want to come back to. But you said a designer might intend an arena. So you mean they might intend to have a space where multiple enemies can attack from?
Yeah, so if I'm just to pick an example from last podcast, you mentioned when you have the crossbow, um, you'll just you have the crossbow, you come across a closed door, you'll put a few shots through the door and just to see if anybody's on the other side. Well, David Zemansky might put some possessed soldiers inside of a barn, and then you go ahead and kill all the possessed soldiers before you even enter the barn. Well, that's not much of an arena, is it?
So you're saying that there's the permeability of barriers makes it impossible or makes it more difficult to set up what would be an arena.
Yeah, and permeability there can. It's not literally just the crossbow going through walls. It can also be
Right.
you open a door and you aggro a leatherhead, and suddenly the leatherhead is no longer in the house.
Right. You can drag enemies, or enemies are not confined by any barrier. Generally, the player is not, in the case of Dusk.
Yeah.
So then, for your definition, it's important that the player and the enemies, or all the combatants, really it's the same point as the dictionary definition, that to meet your expectation, the player and the combatants need to be contained within the same boundary.
Yeah.
Okay. Adrian, what would your intuitive definition of an arena be?
So the enclosed space is definitely one part of it. I don't know how helpful it is to describe how it's not, but it's not, say, the Wolfenstein or even Doom setup of open a door, there's an enemy on the other side of the door, you shoot them and they're out of your way, or you round a corner and then you see three enemies around the corner and you get in a firefight with them. It's not quite that. It's something more like the ability to sort of like bunker down in a single spot where you gradually take them out, or you back away past a door or around a corner like I would in something like Marathon. Like that option there is not viable. So it's almost something more akin to like a Pac-Man maze where I can be flanked at any part of the maze. So while there may be advantageous positions I might want to stay in for a period of time, that position can always come under threat and require me to move to another spot. And that's sort of a never stay in one place, kind of keep moving, kind of circuitous movement. Like, I know I'm describing it more by feeling than a
That's fine.
layout. But yeah, that's what separates it. And Doom 2016 is a lot of that.
So, what you described in like Marathon, you're saying that does meet the criteria of an arena, even though you can go into a corridor and go around a corner. The fact that the enemies can also follow around the corner or are connected to. Well, do they need to be connected to the corridor from the other end? I mean, are dead ends allowed in an arena?
Right, dead ends are somewhat. That's kind of it. It's like the linearity or dead endness can be counter to what feels like the arena setup or gameplay challenge to me.
Yeah.
Because that's one of the things that, well, for one, characterize Dusk in its levels that we're going to be talking about, but also with I don't know why, Doom 2016, that's all that game freaking does. And a lot of that game just has you constantly moving around because there is no position that you can really take without you risking being flanked from being flanked from your side.
Right. So I think that also part of, when you talk about defining it by feel or like how a dead end makes it less of an arena, I think that that's significant in that arena-ness is like a measure, basically. Like, this is a very clear arena would be a football stadium. Like, there's in Duke Nukem 3D, the final map is a literal football stadium, and that meets as or that is as clear an arena as anyone could agree upon. Mm-hmm. And then as you add kinks to that, basically, it makes it maybe less explicitly an arena. But so you're saying, like, if you add a corridor that leads off to the side and it's a dead end, well, that kind of is going to make it a lot less of an arena. Whereas if you add a corridor that loops around and where something can basically move in either direction through this circuit, then that is okay, and that would maintain a certain degree of arena-ness, even though it's not as 100% arena as a football stadium. It's still more of an arena than if it had a bunch of dead ends coming off of it.
Yeah. And it's that capacity for enemies to keep you in danger or to mitigate your positional advantage. It's also why it's so effective in a lot of the outdoor areas, because whether an enemy is 2 stories or 3 stories above you, if it's in an open space, well, it doesn't matter what side of the arena or what height on the arena you're in, they can still see you and shoot you.
Right. So, in that sense, like, the flow of the space.
Yeah,
is
that's a very good word for it. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think that the circuitousness is an important characteristic. My own intuitive definition would just be a space where you can see and shoot everything in it. So pretty close to the dictionary definition.
Just to make sure I understand there, thinking of E1M7 in particular, there's like silos you can take cover behind, and that would fail your definition because if I'm behind a silo, I can't shoot everything, right?
Yeah, pretty much. I don't really think that you can, or I mean, what I like to call an arena, I wouldn't really want structures in it, but like that, and again, though, going back to what I was just saying about Adrian's, like, it's a spectrum, right? So the structures don't in and of themselves necessarily break it, so that I would say, like, oh, this is a totally different kind of space because it has one silo in it. And that's completely different thing than a football field. No, I wouldn't say that. But when you put a bunch of those structures in it, and then they all have interiors to them, and then there are enemies that are stuck in the interiors and can't come out, and then there are enemies that are stuck on rooftops that can't come down from the roof, then it's becoming less and less clearly an arena. It's becoming a more complicated space, basically. And I think an arena is fundamentally, maybe it's a measure of the simplicity of the space. Or to me, right? That's what my definition would center around, whereas Adrian said it's more about flow to him.
Yeah, that complicated nature of the space, I probably would have leaned into that one more, rather than its simplicity.
Well, yeah, you're not being graded on what your first response is. And I guess since everyone else got to give their own definition, and I made you read from the dictionary, Shadi, what would your intuitive definition of an arena be?
I would have gone with what Adrian was talking about, in that if you're basically in need of being on the run from an enemy, then I consider that an arena. If you're in an open, I guess, an openish space, like a circuitous space, and there are enemies that are coming at you, and you have to stay on the move, then that would be an arena for me.
Right. So you have to stay on the move being pivotal there. Like you can't hide behind something indefinitely.
Right. There can be structures to hide behind, but you have to basically open up yourself to enemy attack to to maintain the arena-ness.
I think that those definitions are, or focusing on the flow and, needing to move and being pursued are especially relevant when you're talking about deathmatch arenas, because that really is where the term, like in terms of first-person shooters, arena is a very frequently used term to refer to deathmatch maps. So much so that Quake 3, the deathmatch Quake, or the one that's sort of centered on that is Quake 3 Arena.
Oh yeah.
And I don't know how specifically that game popularized the term. I know the term existed and was being used in first-person shooters before that game, but certainly after that game, the idea of a deathmatch arena was common parlance. And I think that the deathmatchness of it is significant because deathmatches are symmetrical, right? Every player is supposed to be on the same ground. So not just literally the same ground, but, in the same state. And when we talk about like real life or historical examples of arena, like a football stadium or the Coliseum or something, those also similarly are based on, well, I guess usually based on symmetrical contests.
Mm-hmm. It's kind of like once you get started moving in Erebus Reactor, there's no concept of this is my side, this is your side, and we're shooting at each other. That quickly disappears. Right.
And so the reason I say that is that I think that the enemy behaviors themselves, as Golem was alluding to as well, like the way that the enemies interact with you is part of what makes something more or less of an arena. And so Dusk's enemies being arena friendly is part of why, or that goes hand in hand with Dusk having more arena style maps versus like Half-Life, which is something we talked about. Half-Life had been cited as a reference point for Dusk. That is, or at least the most famous enemies from Half-Life are based around AI that take cover and do flanking maneuvers and stuff. And those are that's a type of enemy that's almost specifically meant to always corner you. And that you need to fight by always cornering them. Where they are not operating in the territory like the same way that you are.
I guess you're if I had to think of a counterexample to characterize Dusk, it would be the final boss arena with Jacob, where that boss shoots pretty quickly, and there's nothing to take cover behind, and really you have to, or I feel like you're pretty incentivized to lean on your faster movement options rather than avoiding line of fire.
Well, yeah, I mean, that is, we talked about last time how that, I think we talked about last time, I know we've talked about at some point about how that is sort of like a deathmatch parody, that boss fight. So it is in a very simplified, maximally simplified arena. So let's move on to talking about some maps and some actual arenas that are in the game. And I guess we'll just go through, we've picked out a few. We're going to talk about E1M7 Dead of Night, E2M2 The Unseen, E2M3 Into the Thresher, E2M6 Erebus Reactor, and E3M8. Remind me of the name.
As above, so below.
As above, so below. I was actually, right before we started recording, I was trying to do a Dusk Mare run of that one.
Mm-hmm.
And
sorry.
Go on.
It's just a tidbit. It's like there is a way to cheese that arena, in the tunnel that leads to it, but it's still one that I like and want to talk about.
So, we talked about before, we all played the game on slightly different settings, and like some of us did Intruder mode or Dusk Mare or whatever. I don't think that's that big a deal for this conversation because of the fact that in Dusk there aren't any extra enemies in higher levels of difficulty. The enemies are just more dangerous, essentially. So it does change the way the game plays, but when we're talking about the space and the layouts, the difficulty level, you get pretty much the same thing. You just need to use the space more effectively, basically, when you're playing on the higher difficulties. So I did do E1. I think I did all of these on Duskmare except for E3M8. So let's start with the earliest map, E1M7 Dead of Night. So Golem, you picked this one out. What is the notable arena that you picked this map for?
So this, you start out on a farm, basically, and there's silos and barns and sheds and a house or two houses. And so the arena is basically all the farmland. Yeah.
Okay, so how much of the map is walled? I mean, so you're saying basically the entire map is the arena.
So
is that
one
true?
My interest in picking this one is that the arena, the outer edges of the map are the outer bounds of the arena, but then there are inner bounds, like the different structures I mentioned, the silos, the house, etc., are all unto themselves like mini arenas. And then once you're outside of those structures, they become cover in the larger arena.
So how connected are the interior areas to the exterior areas?
Not well. Like there's, for instance, the house, the first place you go has one door and a window you can break, and otherwise it's walled off from the outside. So
that's something, in particular the window you can break, but the door is a door, and those are both things that the player themselves needs to open, basically.
Yeah.
There's not, when we talk about flow, there's not a way for the enemies to emerge out of those, at least at the start of the map, right?
Yeah, that's right. So you kind of let the enemies get free. But I do worry that, jumping right to that topic would complicate things more than would be useful. That sticking to the main outside arena would really be where I would want to focus on E1M7 at this point.
So go on then. What do you think's interesting about it?
It's the fact that it's the arena is fairly large, and in Dusk, enemies don't despawn the way that I understand them to in two-dimensional games. So you'll have mages or whatever off in the distance firing at you beyond your vision. And it does well to bring out the man, I regret having to make a comparison for this, but it really brings out the doomy behavior of the enemies, where all enemies are awake at all times, and they're all trying to kill somebody, whether it's you or they're infighting. So it's a large space with lots of stuff moving, and so much of the stuff that's moving is outside of your awareness. And even the cover you get is not very protective. Like, the silos are round, so it's pretty easy to get flanked outside of your vision. So there is some respite in some structures, but not much. It leaves you pretty exposed.
Well, it's not always the case that enemies are always awake, right? You have to wake up the enemies first.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, okay.
So there are some of them that, until you come into their line of sight, are just going to hold position, basically. And then once you come into their line of sight, you're right, there's nothing you could do to put them back to sleep or that will turn them off.
Okay, so maybe you've just exposed something I didn't realize about Dusk. Is that to say, in E1M7, am I better if I just park myself in one spot and hold to that spot as close as I can until I've killed every enemy I can see?
Well, whether or not that's the best way to play, I guess, is debatable, but that you will limit the amount of enemies that are attacking you by doing that. For instance, there's a bunch of those goats, the Black Phillips, they're right around the corner from you when you start. Basically, you start behind one of the silos, and if you move forward, then you'll come into their line of sight, and they'll begin attacking you. But if you just stand there, and someone else can correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm pretty sure I'm not here. If you just stand there, the goats aren't going to eventually... They're not going to wander around on their own and eventually find you.
Right. One question, I don't remember. Do the enemies... Do they hear? Because I know Doom had enemies that they specifically deafen, so that they only react to line of sight. But that was one of the unique things about Doom, is that they react to... Like, if you shot a gun, you would awaken other enemies because of the sound. I don't remember if Dusk has that.
Yeah, the enemies will wake up to gunfire. That's why the sword in episode 3 is special, because you can use it to silently kill enemies.
Okay.
Yeah, that makes sense.
So I guess to answer your question, Golem, it's that if you stayed in one spot and took it one at a time, I don't think that would last very long, because inevitably, if you kill the first set of enemies that you do wake up via line of sight, you would wake up this other nearby enemies through the sound of any gunfire, unless you did it all melee.
Right. So that's a place where the barriers come into play, is that these one-way barriers that the player can't, or like the house isn't open until the player opens a path into it, is significant, because the enemies inside there aren't going to wake up and come out as soon as you start shooting.
Mm-hmm.
Even though they theoretically, or even though they would be aware if there wasn't that rule about sound barriers. So the other interesting thing you talked about, you touched on about the dead of night, is that, as you said, there are enemies that are outside of your line of sight that can shoot at you. But that's actually a specific trait of that map, and
Right.
particular other points where it's dark on that map. It's nighttime.
Yeah, it's got that darkness fog.
Right, and it limits how far you can see, because another map we're going to talk about in a little bit, Into the Thresher, has distances that are just as large, but you can see the enemy shooting at you from across that distance.
Mm-hmm.
I have to confess to ignorance there, because I didn't realize, like, I guess the night was just that convincing that I didn't think it was as long on Into the Thresher.
Yeah, you're too absorbed in the setting. But even if not Into the Thresher, certainly the granary is as large as Dead of Night. And that you can see from one end to the other. And I think that that's a really significant element of Dead of Night. And it does push the player toward the enemy more. Like you were talking about, it's hard to hide behind the cover because it's circular. But I also think that it's hard to cover because the enemies have a longer line of sight than you do. So this is a place where darkness in and of itself is creating a barrier. I think that that outdoor area actually sort of separates into two arenas because because you can't see from one side to the other. So if you're talking about what I said at the beginning, like my definition of arena being combatants can see and shoot each other. That is a one-sided setup where it's not symmetrical. The enemies can see you and shoot you from one side, but it's only when you get close to them that you have essentially entered an arena with them because then you can see them.
I mean, can you pick off enemies with like the hunting rifle or something if you see the glow of the fireball coming at you? You can kind of trace the ray.
I can. I don't know if you can.
What?
Yeah, I was just doing that one earlier today, and the scarecrows on top of those silos that spawn in after you get the blue key are kind of a pain. Because as soon as you get close enough that you can see them, you're close enough that they can hit you, and their scatter bullets spread out quite a bit.
Yeah.
So there are multiple waves in that map, as I just alluded to. Once you get the key in one of the structures, it's repopulated. So, basically, what's the difference, would you say, between the first wave and the second wave? Like, why is it interesting to come back to this space a second time?
Even without the enemy differences, I think it's interesting because you're coming at it from a different side, where you start out at one end of the map fighting over to the house, and then if you know where you're going, when you exit the house, you're basically going back to where you came from. So all of the cover suddenly becomes backwards.
Yeah, I think it's very different because you're in the flat area. The side where the house is basically is mostly flat. And the area with the silos there's lots of buildings around there. So when you start out, you've got all these buildings around you and it's easy to take cover. But then when you're coming back, you're in the open space and they've all got the high ground basically to shoot down at you.
Mm-hmm.
Which I think is a cool dynamic.
Yeah. If I remember correctly, when you get out of the house, you're just like immediately bum rushed by the goats.
There's
what
a
are they
bunch
called?
of them.
Black Phillip.
Black Phillips.
Black
Yeah.
Phillips. And then because the Klansmen are on top, some of them are on top of those silos. Although they are restricted on that space up there, they don't walk off ledges. Although they are affected by the jump pads. You'll see the fireballs just coming out from the night sky at you. I think there's even a scarecrow on top of one of the awnings too, and the silos. So they weren't there. I don't think they were actually there the first time around, the scarecrows on the awnings in particular. So they're in just new spots, pressuring you in a different way.
And it's a harder enemy.
Oh yeah, that too.
But the space in and of itself is putting you at greater difficulty the second time that you go through it.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's a third wave there as well, actually, after you get the red key. You remember that, Golem?
Yeah. If I'm recalling correctly, the only thing that distinguishes that is that it has fork maidens.
Nice on the name.
That's what they're called.
I didn't remember that.
I kept calling them psycho grannies.
Yeah, I call them grannies.
That certainly
in my
makes more
head.
sense than Fork Maiden. I don't know what that...
That's what they were throwing? Forks?
No, it's Fork Maiden like the picture. I think it's that picture.
Okay.
American Gothic.
Oh, right.
Oh!
Yeah.
Man, okay.
God damn.
I think that's what it is.
Doesn't really look like it. It's a hat.
I don't know. It's an old lady. That's the best I've got. But there's only, I mean, that is it for the third wave. It's just 2 Fork Maidens.
Yeah.
So, when do you enter and exit that outdoors arena?
I think it's a pretty short trek that you collect the red key card, and then the red brick house is right there, right? Like, you stay on that one side of the silos, the starting side of the silos. You don't really cross the whole arena again.
I mean, from beginning to end of the map, how many times do you go in and out of the arena?
Oh, I guess 3. 1 to the house, 1 to the barn, and then 1 to the brick house.
Yeah, and the barn is a really small structure that is immediately, I mean, you could say that's its own mini arena. That's the perfect example of where I use the crossbow just to kill everything that's inside there. I don't even know what enemies are in there. I just know they're always all dead when I open the door.
Yeah.
Because it's a really small building, so it's easy to do that. And there's also a secret in one of the silos that is actually pretty long, and I feel like a big distraction that caused me to miss how simple the map is in general the first time I played it, because you go down into tunnels for quite a while.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that has a weird, I don't get that space, basically.
I actually left a note because there was a secret that I didn't understand what the secret was until I played it in just the right way, where it's like, oh, this is the switch that I didn't realize was connected to this one bunker next to the blue key door that half the time I didn't realize, oh, wait, that was closed at one point. It was one of those.
Yeah. Kind of confusing stuff. So what's the distribution of weapons on that map?
Okay, I did write down the weapons that are in the map.
Mainly in the, not necessarily in the map, I mean in the arena. And, like, where are they relative to the enemies?
Well, you start out with
landscape.
If I recall correctly, you start out with a pistol and an assault rifle?
Well, I mean, you start out with nothing, but there's a handgun right in front of you.
Isn't there an assault rifle right by, like, a couple of Black Phillips by the beginning?
Yeah, it's around the corner, but you start in the arena, so you start in a space where you don't need to go forward in that direction.
Yeah.
So in the implicit initial direction that you would move, if you just walk forward when the map starts, shortly thereafter you'll see an assault rifle.
Yeah. There's a crossbow, which is pretty easy to spot just because it's inside of a shed by the house, so it's kind of a conspicuous structure.
Yeah.
I think there's a shotgun like halfway up the map, if I'm remembering right, in one of the shed type things.
I think everything else is inside of the structures.
Yeah, but the thing is, the super shotgun and the hunting rifle, I think, are secrets, if I'm remembering right.
I only remember getting the crossbow and the assault rifle.
Yeah, the super shotgun helps a lot on that map, just because most of the enemies in E1 just go down in one shot to it.
Yeah, because when I was playing it on Duskmare, I wasn't. That the house you go in with the blue key is kind of complicated, and so there's that window that you can use to get in and skip everything in there. So I was doing that, and so I would finish with just the handgun, the assault rifle, and the crossbow.
Okay.
And the riveter.
Riveter. How did I know I got all the secrets. Maybe I just didn't write it down.
I may have come into the map with the riveter. I don't remember.
Oh.
I think that covers that particular arena. I think, yeah, the interesting aspects of that one are really the use of darkness to create an implicit barrier and the geometry that has like the high side or the developed structured side and then the flat side, which allows you to have the two different challenges, basically.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, would I say that's an arena?
Well, wait, no. What's the percentage of an arena it is?
Right. How would I measure it as an arena? I would say it gets like a D, maybe. Because the side A and side B aspect of it to me is something that interrupts, like, there's no flow to it, really. The enemies are on the structures and they're fighting you from there. So certainly in the second part, I think it's more like you're fighting against an encampment, basically.
Well, you could define it as two separate arenas for each time enemies spawn in.
Yeah, I mean, you could say that the arena is just the area around the structures.
Mm-hmm. At least for one wave of enemies.
Right, but it's not. The space is connected, so...
Well, I mean, when you enter the house and where enemies spawn in when you leave, that would be a separate arena.
So you're saying that the first set of enemies you fight there is the first version of the arena, and then after you exit with the blue key, that's a second version of the arena?
Yeah.
But it's the same space, and really what we're talking about is what the space is.
Oh. I suppose. But if you define the arena as, in terms of flow, I think how the different enemies being there alters the space, just in terms of how you use it.
Right. So well then separating it like that, would you say that the first wave or the second wave is more or less of an arena?
I guess the first wave is more like an arena. Because enemies are fairly spread out normally. They're not in high places.
Right. Most of the enemies are on the ground at that point.
Yeah. That's more arena-like to me.
So they're... Yeah. And that, coming back to the dictionary definition, that level area that is shared is, you're saying, makes it feel more like an arena.
Yeah.
Okay. So we're going to move on to E2M3 into the Thresher. So that is the one that you picked out, Shouty. So, what did you find? Well, first of all, could you describe the part of the map that you would consider an arena, or the main arena of the map?
Yeah, there are multiple arenas, I think, in the map, but the main one is the outside area, the outdoors area. And you start off by coming out of a small little house, I guess. And I don't think the arena starts quite yet. You come across these possessed soldiers who ambush you right as you leave the house. But even then, I think the arena doesn't really start until after you defeat them and take the fan on the ground up to the first upper level. There, the arena, I think, really begins because you're dealing with enemies from all sides. Even if there's cover around, you still have to take care because enemies will find you even behind the cover. I guess for this arena, I would describe it as kind of like a funnel because you have enemies up in the balconies, I guess, up in the fringes, who are firing down at you, and you have to make your way around the arena in order and carefully dodging everything and defeating things on a level by level basis, just so you're making sure not to get flanked by anything.
Yeah, I think a funnel is a good description of it because it's a layer, or it's uh, layers of concentric circles, basically, or
Yeah.
rings. So you start out in the smallest, or that floor area you said is the smallest layer, and then you move up at the same time that the enemies are sort of pushing you back down, essentially by shooting at you from above.
Right. The floor area, like the very bottom, I don't really consider that part of the arena because it you don't really interact with the enemies when you're down there. They can't really get you. I mean, I guess they could get you from up there, but they have immense advantage as from being on the high ground. So if you're down there, you're basically just a fish in a barrel.
And yeah, I think that how connected that space is related to what we talked about with like how much can you hide in a corner in an arena, or like how much or how safe can you be? And when you're down on that floor area, you can be exposed to the enemies above, but generally, you can also stay safe down there, I think.
Yeah. Well, you can stay safe, but you're not going to be able to see other enemies when you're down there. You have to expose yourself a bit and be at a disadvantage.
But they can't come around you, essentially. They can't do the thing where they circle around and hit you from the other side. So it is sort of a dead end.
Yeah. So I wouldn't really start the arena there. I would start the arena right as you hit the fan, and then you're up on the first ring.
Yeah, so the layers above, like how connected are they? Like how well do the enemies move around in that area?
Well, when you get to the first level ring, the enemies on those rings will eventually seek you out, whether they're mages, grand wizards, or the welders. So you have to really make sure to stay on the move so they don't flank you. But the enemy is up on the fringes or on like the storage containers. Uh, those won't really get to you, and yeah, they're a little more self-contained. They're more providing cover fire for the enemies that are on the first level ring.
So there's a combination then of two ways, or like there is this level area that is this ring, and then additionally, like the silos that we talked about in Dead of Night, there are these stacked up storage containers that provide a place for enemies to stand, but enemies also, if they're on those, are stuck on those.
Right. You can kind of breach their levels if you really wanted to with the fans that are around on the first level ring. But it's not really advisable because there are so many of them. They'll probably take you down as you're trying to get to them. It's better to just try and snipe at them. But even if you are sniping at them, you still have to uh, be in their line of sight, and so you're still vulnerable to their attacks.
Yeah, you can get a little bit, and this is not really, I think, intended in the design of the map. You can get a little bit cheesy with it, with the sniping.
Yeah, if you clear out the first level ring of all the enemies, then you definitely have breathing room to just peek around corners, take and pick off each individual level if you angle yourself correctly.
The There's a dead end where you go to get the yellow key, and you can kind of, and that is actually a spot where, because it's a dead end, you can sort of use it to funnel in all the ground enemies to where you can kind of take them one or two at a time. So when you clear all the ground ones, then you can, cheese it out and play, peekaboo with the remaining enemies on the balconies.
Yeah. And what I was thinking about was even cheesier than that, actually. When you're on the ground, all the way at the bottom, where you enter, you can see some of the mages and the red ones, whatever they're called. You can see their heads. The ones that, in particular, the ones that are on the shipping containers, and they can't hit you from there, but you can hit them with the sniper rifle. So that's only a couple enemies, but there are a couple you can take out before they can hit you.
Right. The low ground advantage.
Yeah. And like I said, I don't think that's intentional. That's just taking advantage of the hitboxes in the game, basically.
Right.
Well, speaking of finding cover, there's also a secret at that dead end. Two, in fact. One you can open up with a bomb, explosive, and get some goodies in there. I actually kind of use that because you're still kind of in the open, even if you do have containers that you can use as cover. I think that you get more absolute cover if you go into the little alcove after you blow it up.
You definitely are more guarded there.
Yeah. But there's also another secret, which is a fake wall. And actually, you don't really use that as cover. What you can do is you can go in there and you're like in this weird little underground maze. It's a really weird secret, I think. It's kind of like if the silo secret in the Dead of the Night was a little more stuck on to its level as an arena. But yeah, I tried to there's a secret within that secret that gives you access to a crystal of madness, which allows enemies to infight who are within its radius after you throw and break it. And I tried to use it, but it doesn't really work all that well. I try to use it on the enemies that are all clustered on the second or third highest rung of the arena. It doesn't really work out though. Like I expect them to all infight, but they really didn't. I also wanted to try using it on the Grand Wizard to back me up, but he doesn't really do anything after you break it on him. He just kind of stands there.
Yeah,
I'd
they'll
rather
definitely.
just kill them.
Yeah, they'll wait around if there's no enemies for them to fight.
Yeah, but they should be able to fight enemies that are just in their line of sight, not just that are also in the crystal. Crystal's gas.
Yeah,
effect.
I feel like I remember using it on enemies and they would like turn away from me after I crack a crystal on them.
Yeah, they should become like allies.
They will.
I remember one turning away from me, and I was like following him, watching him to take his next target, and the first thing, and once he actually sees it, he then turns around and shoots at me. I'm like, "What are you doing, you traitor!" I don't know what happened there.
Well,
Maybe
it's the
you're
crystal
shooting
of
at
madness,
something
not the crystal
behind
of cooperation.
What was one of the Quake expansions had a cooperation item?
Yeah, there was that summoning horn that can summon various monsters at random or set monsters.
Yeah, I don't remember which one that was in, but that was awful.
You didn't like having a pet shambler?
The AI is not meant for following you around, and so anytime you would go off a ledge or something like that, it would just and it was always in places where there were tons of ledges, and you would just lose your little buddy.
Only the one with the shambler was good.
Right. Well, anyway, that's off topic. But in terms of enemies, though, I think that the Grand Wizards in that arena are something that puts a lot more pressure on you to keep moving, because that's an enemy that can attack you from any distance and throws a homing fireball at you, which tracks you at a much closer rate, basically, than an enemy following you and throwing regular projectiles would.
Funny thing about the Grand Wizards is that on my Duskmare run of that map, I found them to be actually one of the more easier enemies to deal with their slow-moving, even homing projectile. I was more on edge from the projectiles thrown by mages and welders. And and there were also those turrets that you have to deal with.
Yep.
So those
turrets are definitely
felt a lot more
something that can
dangerous than
catch
the
you off
Grand
guard.
Wizards. Yeah, but
So-
you can very.
I was going to say, the turrets are in a location, though, where they can't always see you. Of course, turrets can't move. So they're just a fixed aspect of the arena. They're in a place where they can't see you in, like, about half of it, maybe. But in the other half, they can. And they'll shoot at you from really far away. And it's sort of like a scarecrow shot where it scatters.
Yeah.
And it's not easy to see. And so when I was playing it, it was always important to remember to take those out as soon as possible so I wouldn't get caught off guard by them.
Yeah. So I try to angle myself so I can reach the turrets before they can get a good shot on me. And dealing with the Grand Wizards is a lot easier by themselves when they have a slow-moving projectile that you can just nullify by turning a corner.
So I think the part of the significance of the turrets and the enemies that are stuck on roofs or whatever is that counteracts that corner, basically, that you can get around with the yellow key card, because you can drag, as Adrian said, you can drag some of the enemies that are on the same level as you into that corner and fight them safely there. But there are at least 6 or 7 or maybe more than that enemies that are not going to ever follow you into that corner.
Yeah. That was I'm glad you got to that point, because I was about to bring it up, that it's one of the things that was also important for E1 Ep 7, which we discussed earlier, was some of the enemies will chase you around, and then some of the enemies will hold a position from which to pressure you. So even if you're playing Ring Around the Rosie with some of the chaser enemies, there's always these other enemies that can strike you from a different angle, and that's actually kind of important to the setup here in making these arena layouts work.
Right. I definitely agree that that's like a necessary sort of counterpoint because of, and that's something that evolves from the type of enemy that Dusk has, where this is going back to what I was saying about Half-Life, where like a Half-Life enemy, even on level ground with you, will still choose to hide behind something, in theory. Whereas a Dusk enemy will always expose themselves in an attempt to follow you. So the arena layout or the map layout needs to necessarily contain them somewhere if it wants to prevent the player from taking advantage of every blind corner.
Yeah. The enemies that are constrained to the higher ground spaces because they can't figure out how to go downstairs because their pathfinding isn't that sophisticated,
right?
Allows there to be setups of direct and indirect attackers versus all of them being direct because all of them have the pathfinding to follow you.
Yeah, it's a good way of putting it, the direct and indirect. And I think that, when you're measuring the arena-ness of a map or whatever, taking into consideration that that's how Dusk works and that that offset is necessary so that the player doesn't take advantage, that to me alleviates, I wouldn't be so happy in a melee combat only game if there were enemies that were stuck on top of silos, calling that an arena, because it's like, well, you have to get up there and fight them. So it's not really the same space. But in Dusk, because of the fact that the enemies can be contained like that, or that's the only way of positioning a stationary enemy, that really, to me, is much more acceptable or expected in any combat scenario, arena or not, that it's going to make use of that.
Mm-hmm.
Shelby, how many waves do you fight in that arena?
Waves?
Yeah, like we talked about in Dead of Night, there's the first wave before you get the blue key, then there's the second wave after you get the blue key, and the third wave after you get the red key.
I don't think there really are any waves in that. I think all the enemies are spawned in that you fight.
When you pick up the yellow key, more enemies spawn in.
They do? Oh, yeah, you're right, they do. Yeah. More enemies
it's kind of
spawn
tricky
in.
about it, though.
Yeah, you're right. Some mages and welders will show up again on the first ring level.
Yeah.
Do any of them show up on the fringes, on the upper levels? I don't remember. Like,
I don't think so.
Rather.
I think it's when you pick up the yellow key, there's just a few that spawn in relatively near to you. And I think that the idea of that spawn is that it is actually trapping you in the dead end, is what they want to do with that. Because those enemies show up sort of like behind these fuel tanks that are sitting there. And if you grab the yellow key and immediately run back out, they're going to hit you, basically, or you're going to be exposed to them. And if you grab the yellow key and hold there, they're going to close in on your position. So it's just putting pressure on you to get out of that corner or to fight them immediately.
Yeah. I mean, with how many enemies you're greeted with, they kind of just blend in with the rest of the monsters that are already on the field. Unless you really do just clear that whole area out before getting the yellow key for whatever reason.
No, that's how I play it.
That's the way you play it?
Yeah.
Oh. Yeah.
I'm not running around with in that area with all those enemies around. I fucking snipe everything there.
No.
I'm like always hiding behind a corner and sniping something from like the most optimal angle when I play that map.
Well, sniping would be nice if there was enough rifle ammo.
Yeah, well, I make every bullet count. I get 15 bullets and I better get at least 14 kills with it or else I'm fucked.
Yeah, my gameplay has started looking more like that, and I can't tell if it's, the chicken or the egg. Am I getting better because I'm playing like that, or am I playing that like that because I'm getting better?
Yeah. Increasing tactical options that become available when you develop more skill and knowledge about the weapon system. Shouty, were you going to talk about weapons in the arena?
Yeah, in the arena. But I think the weapons leading up to the arena also count because the arena is pretty early on in the level. So if you found all the secrets leading up to the arena, you can have a super shotgun, shotgun, and dual wielding pistols. Oh, and the rifle, if you don't count that little house area part of the arena.
Right.
So yeah, when you get to the arena, you can get a mortar, but it's really in a dense area full of monsters, so it's pretty dangerous. So it's not really something I'd go for. And
There's
I guess
an assault rifle as well.
Oh, where's the assault rifle?
That's on it's on one of the buildings near the yellow key card corner, or the yellow key corner.
Oh yeah, I remember now.
It's just like a raised brick area.
You take the fan up there. Yeah.
Yes,
there's some mages up there.
Right. And again, just like the mortar, there's a bunch of enemies around it, and it leaves you... you're completely exposed there, basically.
Yeah, so the weapons that are directly in the arena are pretty heavily guarded, so you're gonna have to rely on um, some fairly weak ones to begin with. I didn't actually
Yeah.
play. I didn't actually play this map with the intruder mode on or from the level select. Did it from I did it from the previous level in my Duskmare run. So I had a
Okay.
bunch of weapons. I had basically every weapon, so I was able to use rivets and I had way more ammo for the rifle.
Yeah, I think ammo for the rifle makes a big difference. Having the assault rifle also makes a big difference because, when we're talking about large arenas, this is something that really brings out the way that the enemy's position really brings out the distinction in Dusk's weapon set, where you have very short range weapons like the shotguns, which are very ineffective at the range of, if you're to shoot from the floor of this area and try to hit the enemies on the upper rings, then the shotguns are going to be totally useless, essentially.
Well, definitely the super shotgun. You could probably try to snipe with the regular one.
Yeah, you burn through a lot of ammo that way. Of course, you get the most ammo for the shotguns, but it's still going to take you like 5 shots per enemy.
I see.
So the only thing that's really effective is the hunting rifle or there's a hunting rifle, the crossbow, the rivet gun, and the assault rifle can all shoot basically perfectly straight shots. And so the assault rifle, if you come in with that, because as we just said, getting it there is quite difficult. So if you come in with the assault rifle, that helps out a lot.
Yeah, that can also work as a sniping tool.
Right. Because just to quickly reiterate, we mentioned this last time, but the first bullet of that is perfectly accurate. So if you tap the trigger, you get repeated, perfectly accurate shots.
Yeah. But same thing with the pistol for that
so-
matter, so that can also work as a makeshift sniping tool.
No, the pistol doesn't work that way.
I thought the first shot was always accurate if it's single.
The uh, it, maybe if it's single, definitely the dual pistols don't work that way.
No, dual pistol will always
but
have some offset.
The dual pistols also have a much larger deviation than the single handgun, so it might just seem like the first shot is more accurate because I think it's something like 1.5 degrees for the regular shot and then 5 degrees for the dual pistols, which is why the single pistol is actually kind of a better weapon. Good luck keeping it and not accidentally picking up a second one.
Well, you can switch between dual wielding and having
What?
single. Yeah, just press the weapon, the button again.
Oh, that's PC only feature.
Oh,
Ah,
Yeah, you definitely can't do. So I could try it, but pretty positive you can't do that in the console version. Okay. Well, anyway, we're drifting off topic here. So I think that that arena and Into the Thresher is a very distinct one, very memorable part of the game. That funnel shape to it is really what characterizes it and makes it a unique challenge that you're basically fighting your way up against these rings of enemies that are shooting down at you. And you're actually, when you're playing the game for the first time, you're fairly new to the Grand Wizards at that point. So that is pretty much the hardest enemy in the game, or certainly in the top tier of enemy difficulty. So that makes it, for me, I found that to be a particular difficulty spike, getting to that point in the game.
yeah.
So how would you rate this in terms of the arena-ness scale?
In terms of the arena-ness scale, for me, this is like a classic first-person shooter arena. This is an A.
All right.
The only thing that gives me any hesitation is that corner with the yellow key card where
Yeah,
you
that
can
end.
kind of get away from the action. So maybe an A minus because of that. But
Okay.
other than that, you're exposed. You're in the same territory as the enemies, and you gotta keep moving. And so, like I said, I play it with the sniper rifle and take really careful shots, but I take them quickly and then I move on.
Mm-hmm.
It's not cover shooting, basically. Like to me, cover shooting would be the sort of the opposite of an arena. And another major factor in this, actually, that we didn't really touch on, or you mentioned, but there's the fans that allow the fans that shoot the player up in the air, and they allow an arena of this large height to work. Because if you're relying on elevators, then that really would slow down the ability for the player to move between levels. And if you're relying on jumping, then that really limits the height difference that you can have in an arena. But this one is able to be narrow. I think the narrowness is part of what makes it feel like a funnel versus a bowl. It's narrow and tall because it's got these fans that allow you to make this vertical transition, basically.
Yeah. And it's much more allows much more options than if it was to use ladders as an alternate for it.
Right. Because when you're flying in the air from a fan, you're basically still in a normal combat state, whereas on a ladder, there's all kinds of weirdness. Basically, you can't really fight on a ladder. Certainly not in Dusk.
Yeah, not very effectively, and your limit. It's literally one dimensional because you're limited to the point that the ladder reaches the top versus a jump pad where it's just like pick whichever angle you want as long as you go over it.
Yeah. Yeah. So I would say this is very arena-y and very good as well.
Yeah, this is the thing that's just like when I think of Dusk and what it does with its level design that sets it apart. It's stuff like this.
Yeah. All right.
With that, I gotta get going.
Are you gonna? Yeah.
All right. Take care.
Yeah. Thanks for.
Goodbye, everybody.
Bye-bye.
Yeah, no problem. Bye.
Okay. So from there, we're going to move on to the third and final arena that we're going to be discussing. I know we referenced a couple more maps at the beginning, but it's already been an hour and 20 minutes, and so I think that 1/3 arena would be good. So for that, Adrian, you going to talk about Erebus Reactor?
So yeah, Erebus Reactor. So this one is, this one characterized. So unlike E2M3, which is just one part of the level towards the beginning, and then there's a sort of second half of the level where you get into more interior setups, although very interesting ones because of those floor grates where you're shooting at them from below.
Yeah, that's a whole other conversation.
Yeah, but with Erebus Reactor, the entire damn stage is the arena, obviously not including that one part where you go off to fight Little John.
Right. So this one is basically, and Dead of Night, sort of the same thing, but Dead of Night had those houses and interior spaces where there are somewhat longer fights, and I think that Erebus Reactor is, well, I don't even think it's about the houses, really. Erebus Reactor is just, like, huge, and it's got a ton of enemies in it compared to Dead of Night. So
it's a sort of similar feeling once you walk out and, see you kind of like with God damn it. With E2, M3 into the once you go up that jump pad, you realize, oh my god, there's enemies here. Oh, and you turn around, oh, there's more there. Oh, and there's more there. This one is just like that, but much more intense. So once you get out, it's just like, oh god, and there's all sorts of stuff shooting at you. And then you'll even notice some of the welders from like way, way, way up, just going ballistic on you. So you see their volley of their fireballs coming at you. So yeah, this level where it's just like just trying to get your bearings is much more tense compared to Into the Thresher.
Right. Because, and that's where, Into the Thresher had that funnel shape or reverse funnel where you start at the bottom and then you work your way up, whereas Erebus Reactor is based on a flat area that just has lots of large, complicated structures and a catwalk above. So there's not any real implicit direction when you enter the arena.
Mm-hmm. That's right. And while you might say that, oh, well, maybe you can turtle in that first stairway up, the reason why that isn't so effective is because this is just the start of the level. You got to get out there and get your ammo and your weapons. Well, I mean, this is because I also played Interceptor mode, but I think even if you were to holding onto your weapons, you would quickly realize that that's not gonna work for very long.
Right, and the map, and this is where the other ones we didn't talk about this as much, but this is where keys and checkpointing of the map or structuring the progression of the map comes into play to get you to move around to different areas of the arena where you could theoretically work your way around the border of it and expose yourself to far fewer enemies, but you're not trying to get through this arena. You're trying to hit a bunch of points. Yep. And find a bunch of points, really, on your first time playing through. You're trying to find a bunch of points in this arena, where is the next key? Which is in and of itself requiring you to get out there and interact with the enemies.
Yeah. So this is where I've recognized a pattern in how David Szymanski does his levels for Dusk, is that there's quite a number of them that do the downtown/suburbs style of setup where you're in a large open area. You can access a majority of it, but the main...
Downtown and suburbs being Doom 2 references, just to clarify.
Yeah, my mistake to not mention that. Those are Doom levels, not Dusk levels. But but where you have the big open area and you're trying to get into these interior spaces where you collect the keys to progress to the next one, and that's when you get into your more claustrophobic sort of regular Doom Wolfenstyle setups and shootouts.
Right. Go on.
Yeah. What things that characterize the Erebus Reactor as well, though, or at least that distinguish it from some of the other ones, are the massive cracks that you can fall into that are very dangerous, of course. This also helps to keep some of the enemies from efficiently pathfinding all themselves to you, so you can't funnel them as well, which is why some of them are going to round themselves in different ways, and why you don't want to stay in one place for too long, because you might get flanked by an enemy. Is oh, this guy who was awakened probably across the other side of the field but took a different path that I didn't expect, but half the time you can't even see them because you're on this ground level where there's all these structures that kind of block your view of where the other enemies on the opposite side of the field are going.
Right, but the cracks in particular, I think, are a unique element of that, especially compared to the two arenas we just talked about, because they're a way of using essentially a hazard as a negative space in the arena. So there's not a wall there that blocks you. There's nothing that covers you from being shot at there. Yet there's still a line that you can't walk, or a lot of times you can't even jump across because it's a big enough gap. Yeah.
So you have this, I guess, kind of a donut-ish setup, but that's perforated with these container-like structures that then house other enemies, which you find keys and you open those structures, or some of them are the monster closets where after you pick up a key in another spot, they open up and release, say, one of the cowgirls in them or something. Cowgirls or more welders and things like that.
So there are basically, in terms of the exterior areas of the level, there are two main spaces, right? Because there's the upper catwalk as well, which is connected fully to the arena.
Right.
or to the floor.
Yeah, and because the upper catwalk area is, it gives you a clear sight line of almost every part of the arena. While those enemies are constrained there, that's another thing that keeps got to keep moving, because those guys, and they're moving along the catwalk, so they just find a new angle from which to shoot you at. So they also make themselves your kind of your priority target, unless you're stupid, in which you don't focus on them. I mean, if you want to do a self-imposed challenge, you can leave them for last, but they're the ones that are the most lethal, because of the fact that, unlike the other enemies on the ground, where they're obstructed in view by the same structures that obstruct you, they're not limited by that. And if there ever is a chance where you go behind one building, one of the welter just has to keep walking along the catwalk until it's not an issue anymore.
And that's a place where, much more so than in Into the Thresher, the actual height of the catwalk is something that is above your field of view if you're just fighting with enemies on the ground floor, basically. So being aware of that area above is part of what makes it such a high priority to take out the enemies there, because you can't keep looking up at them. Or, I mean, you would have to keep track, keep looking up. And when you look up, you're taking your sight off of what's on the ground.
Right. So they can be very obnoxiously out of view, which is where the interesting choice has that's another thing. I think is just the interesting choices part that emerges of the arenas because of the complex layout, and the lack of ability to just stay in one spot and wait for all the the mad scientists to come at you in a corner so they can just run to their deaths.
Right, and I think that visibility in a first-person shooter is part of what makes this type of arena that we're talking about a significant challenge, or a distinct challenge from a corridor. Part of the challenge, right? Not the entire distinction, but in a first-person shooter, you can't see everything that's around you all the time. You're limited in what you can see, and so you can be attacked from behind. It's not like Devil May Cry, where off-screen enemies will never attack you.
Right. Or if they do, they give some sort of audio cue. Dusk, in this one, and another factor that distinguishes this one is much more. I mean, I don't think this would happen as much in E2M3, in the arena E2M3. This one, you can just lose track of where are the enemies.
Yes, definitely.
So that's one where it's just that'll keep you on the run, is just not knowing where the enemies are. And Into the Thresher, you maybe have to round a couple of the containers to see, oh, there's that welder that was chasing after me. But the arena's small enough that it's okay, you can do a quick 180 panoramic view and get a glimpse of the entire battlefield. But in this one, not so much.
And that is especially significant. This is one reason why I wanted to just set up by mentioning the difficulties at the very beginning, where these arenas are particularly difficult on Duskmare because of this factor of not being able to see things around you and behind you, because one stray bullet can take you out. I mean, that's how Duskmare works. And so prioritizing so that you know where everything is, so that enemies aren't sneaking up behind structures and stuff like that, is a big part of the challenge in that mode. So having this open space and having that really high tier is I need to get to the point immediately where I can see as much as possible.
Yeah.
Because that in and of itself is a huge weapon in staying alive.
Mm-hmm. And this is another funny thing with the catwalks, is that the catwalks are funny in that they have quite a high visibility on the grounded areas, but that doesn't all necessarily make them the best spot to be, I'll just pick apart every enemy from up here. It's you'll find out that doesn't work so much, especially with the shotgunners and their spreads, because, let's just say they got some good eyesight.
The soldiers, you mean, yeah.
Yeah, I'm sorry, soldiers. I still don't remember all their names.
Yeah. Right. When you're up there, you're exposed to whoever you can see. And another interesting thing about that is talking about how enemies move through the environments, we talked about the fans and into the Thresher, and the fans are how you get up to the catwalk in Erebus Reactor. And the enemies can also use the fans to get up. They're not very smart about doing it.
Yeah.
But there are enough enemies in this map, especially if you hang around one of the corners near where the fans are, you can definitely get soldiers coming up there after you.
Oh yeah, the fans definitely leads them to some unpredictable shit.
Right. So that one, instead of being a funnel, it's very much two-tiered, and that means that moving between the tiers is something that is significant to getting an advantage. And I know when I play it, I try to stay up high as much as possible.
Yeah. And this is one where the secret that reveals the super hot power-up is like really, really useful, because it does give you that breathing room from like trying to, look around and seeing, is anyone behind me? Recalibrate where the remaining enemies are. Because as you go through the level, and especially as you spawn in more of them, some of them do. Dusk does perch some of them on top of them, so you have those that mixture of enemies holding a position on top of a shed, and then the regular ones running around on the ground, especially the freaking cowgirls.
Yeah, that's a good point about the super hot power-up, that it does allow you to get a better view, basically, of what's going on.
Yeah, it allows you to gain your bearings without having to be so quick on your reflexes.
Right. So, this one doesn't have as much of a wave structure, I don't think. But there are new enemies that are essentially introduced. Like, where are enemies stored in, basically? Or how do they come into the fight as you move through the arena? Yeah,
this one is actually the hardest, because I actually just don't know. Like, there are some... So, for example, I know one of the... or at least two of the monster closets reveal cowgirls in them. I believe one you open on your own, but one comes out on its own.
There are a few sheds that are basically used to shield the enemy's line of sight. So this goes back to what we were talking about in Into the Night, where enemies don't wake up until they hear or see you. And actually, this is a case where they definitely need to see you to wake up. Because those sheds are used specifically to keep an enemy asleep. The cowgirl in the far corner is definitely the most obvious example, I think, or at least the one that I work around the most. Mm-hmm. Where, depending on where you move, you can stay out of the line of sight and keep that enemy out of the fight for as long as possible.
Yeah. I know in the initial wave, that's where you have your welders on the catwalk on the third high tier of this arena. I believe... See, it's once you start picking up the keys that I don't remember all the things that they activate, but I know there are some welders that are put on top of the structures. I don't remember which key does that, and I know one of the keys opens up a cowgirl to come out of it. I think that might be the yellow or blue one?
The yellow, I think, has a couple of cowgirls.
Well,
okay.
Behind the doors, there are definitely cowgirls, but they don't ever spawn in directly into the arena, right?
Ah, man.
It's so big, you could tell me and I would believe you. Like, Erebus Reactor, it's just hard to know where everything is when.
Right.
Yeah, because, like, I know I've had cowgirls wandering around. It's like, I know I didn't let you out of shed, but I don't remember which keys are the ones that trigger them. That's the thing.
I don't remember exactly either, and I think there's about 4 cowgirls on that map.
Yeah. And that goes to the point about, like, the structure's blinding your view, and it's like, well, there's new enemies now, because Dusk has been setting that trend for the past, 15 maps or so. So by this point, you kind of expect it, but that not being able to see where they are, where are they, you know, is another consideration to the combat in it.
Right. Yeah, so the enemies themselves here, there aren't any of those grand wizards that fire homing projectiles, so that's one relief. And instead, as we said, the cowgirls are really the mini boss type enemies.
Right.
And they're, how dangerous do you find them in this context?
So the cowgirls, for me, were always the most dangerous, just because, well, their projectile is considerably fast. It has the explosion, so even if you round a corner, well, if it hits, even if you dodge it, but it hits a wall, its explosion is still going to damage you. And then there's that third factor where, because a cowgirl already demands so much of your attention, those other soldiers running around can then take their pot shots at you. It's like, shit, I'm trying to keep my eye on the most dangerous thing here, and then this guy, takes a hit.
Right, because she pushes you around, basically. Like, you can't engage her point blank. You need to be running away and hiding, essentially, to fight her.
Yeah, you need to keep your eye on her, because that's the last enemy you want to be seeing you with you not seeing her.
And that's where I find a lot of... I find fighting on the ground level and using the structures... This is a place where I definitely am using cover a lot more to fight than movement when fighting those cowgirls, because I just want to slowly draw them into the position where I've got a good shot at them, and then move to the next position. I don't ever want to fight them in the open.
Yeah. And that's funny, because the number of structures is also what gives the cowgirls an opportunity that there's more chances for her to hit a wall and just hit you with splash damage, if not from the actual grenade thingy itself.
Yeah. Okay. So, where are there weapons placed around this arena?
This one I did not do my homework on. Right. I'll just admit that part. I know they're located throughout the arena. At what point you pick which area you pick which specific weapon, though, I do not remember. But I know you can get the hunting rifle. You can get almost every weapon. I know you definitely get the hunting rifle, the grenade launcher, the riveter. You definitely get shotguns and super shotguns. I don't know which weapon you don't get in this level. Might be the crossbow. I think that's the only one you don't get.
Golem, what were you going to say?
That the most prominent ones, you can get the hunting rifle and the mortar, I'm pretty sure, very quickly out of that red staircase. There is a crossbow, but it's in a secret above a turret. And I don't remember finding the riveter or the super shotgun, but it also took me 30 minutes to find all the secrets in this level. This was a level where I killed all of the enemies and then was like, I have 7 out of 8 secrets left to find.
I was scrubbing through for the last one, yeah. There's a bunch of weapons at right near where you start. Of course, immediately as soon as you start getting shot at. So I tend to run away from the hunting rifle pickup that's right there and forget about it. But yeah, as soon as you go up the stairs, there's definitely handguns. There's a hunting rifle. I think there's a super shotgun there. And there's the mortar is in the corner to your right when you go up the stairs. It's near the fan, basically. And I don't remember when or where you get an assault rifle.
That's in it's in a nondescript shed that might be open the instant you spawn in, or you might trigger it to be open.
Okay. I don't think there are any doors that open on triggers. I think it's just enemies that spawn in on triggers.
Okay, then, yeah.
It's definitely, again, it's a large map, it's complicated, and it's easy to, like, walk into a shed, find a weapon there, and be like, oh, I didn't get this before, so that must have opened up when I did something else. But nah, you just walked past it before because there's so much shit there.
Yeah.
Okay. So, yeah, I think that about covers it. I mean, the space or the way the having the catwalk above as a ring overhead and fighting down is something that definitely favors the mortar. I find that's a big mortar map for me, which is not a weapon I use a lot in Dusk. But it's something I use a ton on that map because you can just keep throwing them down at enemies and they'll cluster up sort of as they follow you around, and you can take out a lot of soldiers that way.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And on the flip side, the mortar is useless for trying to shoot up at the enemies that are already on the catwalk. If you're trying to shoot them from below, in that case, you pretty much need the sniper rifle.
Yeah.
All right. I think that about covers Erebus Reactor. On my scale of how much of an arena is that, I would say that is another pretty classic arena. It is the level of structures in it, I think, definitely convolutes things, and so maybe I would give it a B on the scale versus an A, just because there is a lot of, like, where did this enemy come from? Where did someone go? Like, there are a lot of hiding places, and not in the way of, like, having darkness where you know exactly where an enemy is, or you know broadly where an enemy is, but you just can't see it exactly. In this case, they'll vanish on you, and you need to wait for them to show themselves again, basically.
Mm-hmm.
But definitely, it fits this pattern of types of maps that Dusk do. Whether or not in the grand scheme of first-person shooters or football games or whatever, it is perfectly an arena. It is a very characteristic example of this type of Dusk map. And again, just like Into the Thresher, and Dead of Night is good as well, but I think Erebus Reactor is one of the best maps in the game. It's a really fun one to replay. Definitely one, when I play through on Duskmare, some maps are like just really frustrating and not fun at all. Some are really fun, and this is one that is worth playing on Duskmare because it makes it a lot more fun.
Yeah, this is a super dynamic map.
Yeah, and this, to me, this map is a great example of what Quake is not. Like, you can say Quake has arenas or whatever, and we talked about in the previous podcast about the number of elements, basically, that Dusk can have versus Quake. Dusk can have dozens of enemies active at a time. Quake can have about 4. And this is the type of map you just can't do in Quake, or in the original Quake as designed for the hardware at the time. Obviously, source ports, fan maps, etc., have totally different limitations. But like that scale of dynamic action, all these elements in play, and the distances that you could take advantage of, the height differences and everything, are something that just doesn't exist in Quake. And so, yeah, I think that's very much part of why it makes it a characteristic Dusk style of play. And, maybe it relates more to Doom 2, but the mechanical differences between Dusk and Doom 2 are so significant that, you certainly can't say it's the same gameplay.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's something
Yeah.
I got to appreciate more replaying Dusk in the interim between this podcast and the last. And replaying some Doom and Doom 2 levels is, having those larger arenas in a Quake engine feels... I mean, yeah, that is a distinct statement that I wish we'd identified more clearly in the first podcast.
Mm-hmm.
Just because height differences have such a different meaning in Doom, like it's not that like it's bad because you can't look up or that it's like less dynamic or something like that. It's just it has a different meaning entirely, being on a different height from an enemy because of the fact that you can't look up, and you're just not on equal footing the same way that you are in Dusk.
Right. It's a lot of mechanical difference, like the fact that jumping, no jumping, no ladders, no jump pads. So just like your ability to ascend vertically in Doom is already way pared down compared to the level design that can be done in Dusks.
And like I said when we were talking about Into the Thresher, Dusk's weapons are much more of like a long range versus short range dichotomy, whereas Doom's weapons aren't really balanced that way. It's kind of got different stuff going on. I mean, in Doom, your sniper rifle is a shotgun. That in and of itself tells you how different Doom is weapon-wise from Dusk and the rest of later first-person shooters.
Right, and then there's just simple engine limitations to the 3Dness that you can do in those setups in Doom versus Dusk, which is the fact that Doom can't do like room over room.
And you can't shoot infinitely far in Doom either. You know, stuff can be out of range.
Oh, yeah.
So, and another thing here, though, we talked about these large 3D open-air arenas, but something that is, for better or worse, missing for the most part in Dusk, and actually it's a little bit of a shame we didn't get to talk about any arenas that have them, is flying enemies. Flying enemies, of course, are a very big deal in Doom and Doom 2, and not as much Quake.
There's just the Screes or whatever they're called.
Yeah, and they're not like the most dangerous enemy. But these enemies in these stages in Dusk that we talked about didn't have any flying enemies. And that means that the floor geometry is all the more important and all the more of a leveling agent between the player and enemies, because you are in that same, you both are reliant on the fans to get between levels, and you and the enemy both need to go around buildings the same way. Whereas when you have a map that's loaded with cacodemons or drones in Duke Nukem 3D, those things really change the pressure points in an arena. So that is something that allows these parts of Dusk to... I just think that the geometry matters a lot more when you don't have enemies flying around everywhere.
Mm-hmm. Right. Because you know where the enemies are going to... You know where the enemies are going to be.
Yeah, I mean, you and the enemies are on the same path. I guess I said it well enough already.
Right. And I guess even, like what's the closest analog so far I've been able to think with Quake is, I think, maybe Ziggurat Vertigo. But even then, it's like, because of the floatiness, and it's also, even then, it's also still not that big. So my impression was it forms more of like a complex shooting gallery than necessarily that, chasing around, choosing where I'm going to go next to gain a positional advantage on my enemy, where I risk being flanked or whatever. That didn't happen.
Right, but Ziggurat Vertigo actually is an interesting point of comparison, and I'm glad you mentioned that, because it's not something I thought of. It's definitely, the gameplay itself, totally different, because it's all about the fact that you're stuck in the air, basically.
Yeah.
In Ziggurat Vertigo, but that is a very... because I struggled to think of any Quake maps that were really vertically oriented, and that is definitely an instance of one.
Mm-hmm. It's too bad they didn't come up with jump pads until like Quake 3. Actually, I've never played Quake 2, so I'm ignorant, but I'm guessing on that point.
I'd have to think for a minute about where jump pads show up first. But yeah, it's not till a little bit later than Quake.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that wraps up our discussion of arenas in Dusk, or just basically the combat layouts of Dusk.
Yeah.
So I'm not sure what the subject is going to be next time. Yeah, I'm not really going to say any more about it because I have to think about it. But we are going to continue with another podcast on Dusk. This was a great discussion we had tonight. And so I'm looking forward to continuing with Dusk.
Yeah, same here.
Yeah.
All right. If no one has any final thoughts, we'll wrap it up.
Cool.
Works for me.
All right. Thanks, everyone, for joining me. Thanks for listening. Good night.